Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yo, what's going on, Xbox and YouTube? Now, it has been a long time since I've made a video. I've been kind of under the weather. I'm sure you guys can kind of hear it in my voice. But today, I really want to talk to you guys about being the best bomber pilot within Battlefield 1. Now, I'm sure all of us here know and love how the planes work in Battlefield in general, but within Battlefield 1, specifically using the bomber, this plane works out much differently than any other plane within any other Battlefield. Unlike the jets in Battlefield 4 and the dogfighting within Battlefield 4, everything in Battlefield 1 is slowed down a lot, and it gives you way more time to actually be accurate, at least on console. On PC, it's obviously much easier when you have a mouse to use for aiming, etc., and all of those weird things. But today I really want to talk to you about the best way and the best possible way that you can be a Top Gun bomber pilot. Now, the first thing you want to do is know when to use the bomber, obviously. You don't want to go into battle with one bomber against several fighter jets, or when your enemy team is heavily using flat cannons, so you always want to look out for the proper time to bring the bomber plane out, because the bomber is a very slow plane and it's huge, so it's literally the easiest target flying in the sky. So once you have recognized the proper time to bring out the bomber, you also have to recognize the proper ammunition to stock your plane with. Now, you have three different options at this time, one being the incendiary devices, which I will get into more of that in a few seconds. The other being a barrage bomber, and the last one is the torpedo setup. Now, we're going to start with torpedoes. Obviously, you can use torpedoes against anything other than a boat. It doesn't have to necessarily be a boat. It can be a ground-based vehicle or a group of infantry. But the torpedo does not work well against infantry. You practically have to drop it on somebody's head for the kill. So it makes it much harder to actually hit your target if you are going for a ground-based target using the torpedo setup. Now, the torpedoes are great for when you are playing maps that have the certain behemoths on them, like the massive battleship, and that is pretty much it. That is the only map this is really useful on, other than maybe trying to hit a few of the torpedo boats that are out there. The torpedo is probably the most useless setup within this category. Now on to the barrage bombers. Now, the barrage bombers are the best all-around choice for either taking out vehicles or taking out infantry. It has two different types of bombs, one being a heavier bomb designed to take the vehicles out, and the other being more or less a barrage of smaller munitions to take out the infantry. So this one can be quite useful, and it is the default setting for the bomber plane. Now, the best setup within Battlefield 1, at least in my opinion, is the incendiary device for the bomber. Now, the incendiary devices cover a massive patch of ground. Depending on how fast your plane is going, they are quite accurate indeed. And they are super powerful. People tend to walk right into it, not even realizing that they are walking into an incendiary device, and by the time they catch fire, it usually is too late for them. I have racked up several multi-kills using the incendiary devices, and it is just my favorite device to use on the bomber plane. You cover a much broader scope compared to the torpedo or the barrage bombers, and you have a longer duration. Now, the only thing that incendiaries are not good for is trying to get into a protected area such as a tunnel or a fortified building that still has its roof intact. Incendiaries will not burn down buildings, they will not burn down doors or roofs. So you kind of need to have somebody come in and clear the rooftop in order for you to catch those people within the buildings. But the other tactic you can use, instead of having to take the roof off, you can simply incendiary device the entire surrounding area of the building, and anybody leaving the building is pretty much as good as dead. So overall, I would say the incendiary devices are the most powerful device you can use within the bomber plane. So it makes it the best item to use at the moment within Battlefield 1 for infantry people. Now, the best device to use against vehicles would be the barrage bombers, no question about it. And torpedoes at the moment are pretty much useless. I kind of think they need to rework this entire class or add something to the torpedo class that makes it a little bit more useful, because like I said, you have to be so dead accurate when using torpedoes on land compared to having to use them in sea-based objectives. So it's kind of a useless thing at the moment, considering there's only a few maps that actually utilize water enough for you to want to equip the torpedoes. So overall, incendiaries are the best for the bomber. Now, depending on how much you've played the bomber position or the plane position, you will unlock different camouflages, and these camouflages can really help depending on which ones you get. I believe there are only a few out at the moment, but the harder it is to identify and see your plane within the air and the changing weather effects within Battlefield 1, the better and more likely you are to last within that plane. Now, another tactic you can use when in a dogfight with a bomber is, instead of trying to outrun the opponent, simply slow your aircraft down to its slowest speed possible before stalling, and 9 times out of 10, the person that is chasing you will end up crashing directly into the ass end of your airplane, and shortly after that, making a steep nosedive straight into the ground. Most people do not expect you to hit the brakes, so they are hitting the accelerator while you are slowing down, and instead of going around you, usually they can't because they're trying to shoot you. They end up just crashing right into you because they are so unskilled. It is actually the most hilarious thing to see, and it feels quite rewarding in the end when you find out you took that pilot out. Now, one of the major problems with the plane that actually happened from beta to launch is, instead of having to toggle your down-facing scope so that way you can aim as you fly over your targets, you now have to hold the button. So instead of just toggling it by pressing up on the D-pad and continuing flying, you now have to hold up on the D-pad while continuing flying and dropping bombs at the same time. It is a lot for 2 hands to do on one controller. Now, there is one way around this as far as I know, and it is simply to toggle your aim down sight for all weapons from pressing the button to holding the button, or vice versa. This is the only way to get that to switch within the planes, and I honestly think they need to add a toggle on or toggle off keybind so we are able to select whether or not we want it to be toggled on or toggled off. In my opinion, there's just too much for your hands to do at such a critical time when you are trying to be accurate and precise with your bomb drops, and you have to hold multiple buttons at once in order to succeed. So to recap, guys, the first thing you need to do is decide the right time to bring out your bomber plane. Make sure there are no attack planes or multiple flak gunners on the ground before you take off, and make sure you select the right devices for the right application, and make sure that you always watch your back, and instead of speeding the plane up when you are being chased, you slow her on down and let those people crash right into you, and then just continue on with your bombing run. So guys, that is, in my opinion, how you become one of the best bomber pilots within Battlefield 1. And if I've opened your guys' perspective on being a bomber pilot within Battlefield 1 at all, just remember to like, subscribe, and comment only if you want to. And if you guys have anything or see anything that I may have missed that is really important to being a good bomber pilot, please let me know in the comment section or simply message me. But with that being said, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace.